Good afternoon to one and all present here. At the outset, I, Siksha Lehre, along with my co-host Tarang Patidar, on behalf of SPE IIT ISM Student Chapter, would like to welcome Mr. Devajit Ghosh on the commencement of SPE Winter School. The session highlights of the Winter School will be business planning in oil industry, exploration, petrophysics, directional drilling, well control, artificial lift, well intervention, and enhanced oil recovery.
We introduce to all Mr. Devajit Ghosh, an alumnus of Batch 2000, who is a seasoned oil and gas industry leader, having more than 21 years of experience in oil and gas asset development and management. He has a great innovation in end-to-end oil field operation and management by directing and leading strategic teams in positions of leadership. He has efficiently led multicultural teams and managed stakeholders globally. Moreover, Sir has exposure to field development and execution, business planning and external reporting, finance and investment review, and petrophysics.
Lastly, I welcome everyone who is participating in this program through the designated web platform. I firmly believe that we would be enlightened much over the topic after hearing thoughts of Sir provoking lecture on today's topic, business planning in the oil industry. I welcome you all again on the SPE IIT student chapter for attending this program and making it a grand success.
Before starting with today's webinar, I would like to request all attendees to please keep their mouths muted for smooth conduction of the session. Attendees can write down their queries in the chat box. We will have a separate question answer session for that. So we hand over this platform to you now. You may start the first lesson of Winter School.
Hey, thank you, Tarang and Shiksha. And Nitish is not here. He's the one I can
Yes,
see.
sir, I'm here, sir.
Yeah, you are. So Nitish,
Yes,
thanks to you as well. You have been asking me, and
yes, sir.
finally
Thank you,
we are.
sir, for conducting. Sir, we are obliged, sir.
So I hope we should be able to learn together something new.
Yeah,
Now,
yes, sir.
now let's make it. Let's ease the platform and let's make it interactive. I hope you have not had your lunch. It just eases the pressure on me to keep you all awake. I'm joking, huh? We will have a good session. Don't worry. Now, can you see my presentation?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
What you can see?
So I can see an Excel sheet.
Beautiful. So that is my presentation. So what happens is, and we will definitely talk about a lot of stuff. What happens is, let me switch off my video just in case I have some issues with the bandwidth here. So typically what happens, when we build something, I can start with a lot of presentation, a lot of complex things, but I was just wondering this morning, how should I start it? Now it reminds me, if you all have bought any gadgets like phones, watches, cameras, or whatever, you will see all of us. We only look into the end to end, the first one or two, the easy quick start flyers, and figure out how to start it, how to stop it, how to slide it up, down, left, right, and then going forward, we figure out. So as engineers and logical minds, our brain works that way. Like, okay, let me understand the end to end, what it is all about, and what best to understand, then create a business plan. Shall we? So please feel free to just nod your head or say yes or no. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a business plan together from a blank piece of spreadsheet. And maybe one of you can basically keep unmuted time to time to just if you think you can do it differently. But I'm sure you'll learn a lot this way. Number two, what do you mean by business plan? So business plan typically talks about, say, a company's operational, strategic, financial perspective so that you can deliver the purpose of the company. And what is the purpose of any company? It's to make money sustainably. It used to be only make money long back, but now you need to make it sustainably. You cannot harm the environment, you cannot harm the people, you cannot harm the climate, and you should be able to make money. While that is a written document, which has got a number of nuances and stuffs to it, the crux of it is a financial cash flow statement that is based on 4 input. What are those 4 input? Number one, if you're making a business plan, probably I'll just keep my. So if you're making a business plan, you need to have a product. The product is something that you sell to anyone. In our case, what is the product? It's hydrocarbon. Secondly, you need to have a price. You need to sell the product at certain price, which is the oil price. Number three, in order to sell the product at a certain price, you need to incur certain cost to develop or create that product. So there are some cost associated with it. And finally, you operate in any countries, the resources that we operate, which is the natural resource, belong to the country, which means the government levies some tax. Now, don't ask me why is there tax. Tax is there, so we need to pay some money to the government. So you need to understand the taxes, royalties, or whatever we need to pay. So we have a product, we sell it at a price. In order to create the product, we incur certain cost, and once we sell it, the revenue we earn, we pay some taxes. Whatever remains, we make some money. That's a simple thing that we do. Now we need to create a workflow to understand how all these things comes together. Shall we? Let's see how we can do it. Now let's assume that we have just all together, how many of us are here, 32 plus, created a oil company, and we have some kind of product, some kind of forecast of how we are going to produce them. I hope the spreadsheet is still visible to you. And let's assume that we will be producing them for the next 10 years. So let's say 1, 2. For the next 10 years, you're going to produce some hydrocarbon. And let's assume we have an investor. Let's make all these things centralized. Let's say we have an investor who is waiting to get, who will be funding the money that we need to develop this field. And he needs a business plan in the next 30 minutes. However, the astute and brilliant engineers that you all are, and you know how to make a business plan, and you know how to use a spreadsheet. So you can do it. And let's see how we can do it. So for a 10 years, you know you have certain forecasts, which is what as petroleum engineers you will be doing. So let's create certain oil production assumption. How the oil is produced. Maybe one of you or some of you can actually be a little interactive with me. Shall we be producing anything in year one? Okay.
Yes,
That
sir.
Yeah. So if you have a field development plan, we typically won't be producing anything in year one. Why? You don't know how to produce it. You need to put some platforms, some facilities, some drilling in place. So probably in year one, we will be not producing anything. Year two, mostly no. Let's assume we start producing from year three, and we have spent the first 2 years in producing some facilities. And typically it ramps up, it plateaus, and it comes down. So I'm just putting some random figures here. Okay, here's the thing. I'm sorry, we need to give some. So let's say 1 million barrels. So 1 million barrels of oil. So 6 million barrel in year three. Let's say sell 8. We quickly ramp up to 25. Let's say 20. Let's increase it 25. We have 4 years left. So let's start declining it because within 10 years we will be done. I'm putting some random figures. So let's say this is our oil production targets. Let's see how the plot looks like. It should resemble something realistic. It does, kind of. So you don't produce anything in year one, you don't produce anything in year two, you start producing and then declining. Let me see if you are typing message. Probably I won't because I'm presenting from another screen. Perfect. So if anyone is not understanding, please feel free to speak because I am not looking at the Google.
So we are understanding. Yeah.
Perfect. So you can, and my screen is visible to you all?
Yes, sir, it is.
Beautiful. Okay. Uh, Now we will have to assume certain price. What is this? This is our product. How do we assume the price? We don't know. In the next, let's say oil price. Now, how do we do it if we don't know something? Of course, we can assume something. So let's assume some oil price because we need to understand that our project is profitable. Shall we? Let's create a list. Uh, List. Let's say we will test our plan against 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and $90 oil price, which sounds like realistic. And let's put 40 here for now. So we will say for going forward, our prices will be this cell, and let's do function F4 to fix the cell. So what we're doing here, we are selling this product at certain price. And if you multiply the product with the price, you get your revenue. So you multiply this with this. You get, I did some mistake. You get certain revenues, right? And these are your revenues. Oil price in dollar USD, total revenue in dollar USD, and these are all in millions. Why don't we sum the total also here? Let's do it. So, I'm sorry guys, I'm hurrying up. Please feel free to chip in if you don't understand. So we will be producing 90 million barrels of oil in, this probably doesn't make sense to add up, so let's delete it. And we will be making close to $3.6 billion or $3,600 million. And if we increase the oil price to 50, it is working. So let's start with 50. So it's a reasonable assumption. So this, just for the sake of little aesthetics, let's color it, and let's color the year with a different color, maybe something like that. Yeah, let's just leave the summation but not colored. So we have a price. Let's call it price. And we have a forecast of the product. Let's call it product. Of course, we are not going to deliver it by, of course, we're not going to deliver it without incurring some cost. So what are the costs, you may ask? Typically, we will say there are three types of costs, or let's say two types: OPEX and CAPEX. There are others also: feasibility expenditure, exploration, expex, which we call exploration expenditures. And we will not, to make it simple, we have two types. We will deal with two types of costs. So, and those two types are CAPEX and OPEX. So what is CAPEX, you might ask? Of course, CAPEX is something that expenditure to create fixed assets like plants, properties, equipments that adds to the future economic benefit for the company. In our case, it will be, let's deal with, say, platforms. Then we will insert some facilities. Then we'll do some drilling activity. And let's leave it there. And I just created 4 because I wanted to do a total. And let's call this bucket of expenditure that we incur as CAPEX. Now all these are in dollar million. Just a typical oil field unit I'm using. So we are not producing in year 1 and year 2, just as a practical scenario in any oil field. We are putting the platform in, so we do incur some cost. Let's say we incur $100 million, and let's say we incur another $100 million in year 2. Facilities typically gets tied in after the platforms are in place. So let's say we start incurring cost on facilities from year 2. Maybe we will spend $100 million. We can split it 50-50. Okay, let's do it 60-40. And drilling typically starts from the first year only. So let's say we will be drilling continuously few wells, $100 million in the first year to 120. We ramp up, we go down, and we drill few more, maybe 60 in the year 4. So these are the typical capital expenditure which will reap the benefit for producing for the next 10 years. In reality, you probably will continuously incur something for the sake of our easiness and the time constraint that we have. The business plan we are creating, let's leave it and let's create a sum of these things. So first year, 200 million. Second year, let's join them to see how much we're doing. And also let's join them here. So in total, we will spend 200 million for platform, 100 million for facilities, 360 million for drilling. Total $660 million we'll be spending yearly, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. And then we're not going to incur any capex, and let's color them with something else. Now we come to OPEX. What is operating expenditure and how many types are there? Okay, we will in this case we'll deal with probably 3. Let's not deal with multiple. There are many types. So let's call it fixed OPEX and variable. What are fixed and variable? Say you have to rent some office spaces. You don't care. It means it doesn't matter you make money or not. You have to pay the rent. Those are fixed operating expenses. Variable, if this oil company recruits all of us, they need to pay our salary. Now, our salary is variable because the more we produce, we need more people. And as a result, more variable OPEX, which is linked to the amount of revenue you're making. If you are not making any revenue, you can fire your people and say, get lost, and you don't need to incur that. So in our case, what we do, let's say the fixed OPEX the first year, okay, this is also in millions of dollars. The first year, I'm assuming you will be drilling, putting your platforms and stuff using contractors, so you will not hire much office spaces. And from the just $1 million, let's ramp it to probably 2 million. As you come close to your operation, you need to rent office spaces, create operating offices, create remote location offices, etc., for which you need to pay rent. And typically fixed OPEX tend to remain constant after a certain while. So let's make it something like that. So you kind of ramp up, ramp down, and remain like this for the rest of the field life. The variable one, of course, you don't produce much. You have some managers managing all the contractors, so you don't recruit many people. Going forward, reserve engineers are getting recruited, production technologies are getting recruited, so your operating in expenditure will increase in leaps and bounds. I'm just putting random figures here because this is where your peak production starting, so you need to develop your team much before that. And let's continue like this. But again, from when you are going down in production, you will mobilize your staff somewhere else, and you kind of think that, okay, let me go down here 20, but you have to manage your show, so you cannot probably go down below 10, I'm assuming. And let's make it total. And let's make it over here. And let's go, just for the ease of understanding, let's color them. Any question from anyone? Is it clear up to? It's simple. Is it clear up to now?
Yes, sir, it is clear.
It's clear, sir.
Beautiful. We are doing excellent, don't worry. I'm messing up something here. I just hate it if the aesthetics doesn't look nice. Yeah. So now imagine we have to create our total. I'm just going to create. That is, how do we then take the cost that we incurred, which is in our case the operating expenditure and the capital expenditure, out from the revenue so that we know how much money we can pay. However, there is a way. If it is a operating expenditure, you have to this is called expense in, which means you take it completely out from your revenue that year itself. Because if you are recruited as a petroleum engineer, the economic value that the company gets is actually for that year. If next year you are not working, you don't create any economic value for the company. So your salary, which is part of the operating expenditure, is taken out from the revenue that same year. However, if you incur capital expenditure, you incur a huge expense in year one, but the economic value you will be producing through that for the rest of the field's life, as long as it is maintaining its integrity and so on and so forth. Those things are also considered when you make a complex business plan. But as a result, you distribute this money for the rest of the field's life. There are many ways to distribute it, but this distribution, this is called capitalizing of the capital expense, is done through a process called depreciation. And let's assume that since it's a 10-year project, we are going to depreciate 10% every year. So we are 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4. Why 4 year? Can anyone say? Because we only incur capital expenditure for 4 years. So this is the total. So this expenditure, let's say we multiply by 0.1, which is 10%. And this then, we just copy this and function F4. And then we spread it like that, which is for the rest of the 10. So for year one, we spent 200 million. That gets distributed for 10 years as 20 million. For year two, we spent 280 million, which multiplied by 0.1, and then we can spread it. And bear with me, it will all come together when we finish it. Uh-oh, what am I doing?
But there is some mistake, I guess.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I was just,
Yes.
let's make it function F4, fix the cell, and let's, and so on and so forth. So we will then,
In year one also, right?
oh, right. I should have, the formula is there. You are right. So we are listening. Thank you very much. Now it makes sense. And let me delete this. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
I should have done this first. Now we are free. Right. Thank you. Star 0.1. And then let's continue expensing it 10% every year. And let's do that. While in year 3, it is 60 star 0.1. We are spending 10%, expensing 10% every year. As a result, we are just copying this cell. Why I'm interested with the formula? Because if we make any changes, it automatically will change immediately. And let's make a slightly darker color. So yes, so we have the depreciations. We don't incur any capital expense beyond year 4. If we do, then we go on adding year 5, year 6, year 7, and do the same thing. Are there other methods to calculate depreciation? Yes. What are those methods? You will learn it as you go forward. In the interest of time, we don't do it. There is then another component. What is that component? It's called royalty. Now, there are many types of contracts in a hydrocarbon industry you can face. I will show you the easiest one, which is called tax royalty. Now, what is royalty, you might ask? So what happens is we, or as a company, or for that matter, any company doesn't own the oil and gas. It's owned by the state, and by state, the government. They have given the company, which is us, a right to exploit it and earn some revenue. So they will, it is a right of the government or a perquisite of a state to get some money out as a revenue from percentage of the revenue before the tax is calculated. That is called royalty. We don't know. Governments are unstable. They change it all the time. Like oil price, let's make some royalty assumptions. Based on my experience, I will say give you some realistic assumption here. Let's say it varies from 20%, 0.25, 0.3, and let's make 0.4. So some companies will, some countries will take. And let's deal with 30%. You remember I said it is taken directly out from the revenue. So we will, what is our total revenue is this. What shall we multiply this with? This one. Why? Because before you calculate anything, they don't care you make money or not. What they care is their government's cut is given or not. That's royalty. So we create some royalty. So this is our, and why not we drag it? So clearly, this is the amount of royalty we need to be paying to the government. So if you make 4.5 billion, you need to pay 1.3 billion straight to the government. And let's also color it with something dark. Very important. Let's do this. Okay, so as you can imagine, these are our cost models. So let's call them cost that we incur. This is the price, this is the product. I should have actually, let's bring this here. Then what we do is what we need to understand the cost that must be deducted out to calculate on which we need to pay. That is called fiscal cost. What is that? It's a product of the royalty that you pay, which is this, plus the depreciation plus the OPEX, because the CAPEX is calculated in the depreciation, which is spread across the year. So we don't add the CAPEX here. It is taken care. But these are the costs that we will be incurring going forward. That's about it. I'm just checking it is done properly or not. Actually, I did a mistake. Let me just add the total of the, we have to do a total here, sorry. Total of all the depreciation, not only 1 year's depreciation. So, and you add it, which is color it the same color. And what we need to do is add this guy. Yeah, makes sense. You are with me still?
So what's
Yes, sir.
fiscal cost?
Fiscal cost is, say, if you sell a product, you incur certain cost. Out of that cost, part of the cost, the economic benefit you realize continuously as long as you sell, and some cost you immediately realize, which is people's salary is immediate, whereas you build a plant or buy a laptop, you realize for. So the laptop cost, which is in our case platform cost, you don't immediately take out that same year. You take out through your depreciation across the length of the field's life. So fiscal cost, when you add, you take your royalty, your depreciation, and your operating cost out from your revenue. That is your fiscal cost. Why we calculate this, you might ask? Because from the revenue, we then take the fiscal cost out to know how much is our taxable income. On that taxable income, we again pay to the government amount of tax the government charges. That is why it is called tax royalty contract. After we pay the tax, what remains is our profit. So in order to calculate our profit, we need to calculate our fiscal cost. Make sense?
So are we not already paying royalty and then we are paying tax again on the taxable income?
And that is why it is called tax royalty contract. That is how it is. How it is. Sometimes taxes are pretty high. So this is the amount of royalty we are calculating. We are not paying it. We are this. You see, 30% on the revenue you are calculating. You add that royalty, you add the depreciation, you add the operating expense, subtract it from the revenue. What remains is your fiscal cost. And on that fiscal cost, you calculate taxable income. So what do we do to calculate taxable income? That's right. You take the revenue minus your fiscal cost. So it's minus 23 and then continue. Now it makes sense. Doesn't? Ask me. This is how why we want to clarify these things.
Understood, sir.
Hmm?
Understood, sir.
Understood?
Yeah.
Great. Now these are all dollar million. You need to understand, and we have some. We will all bring everything together to make you give you a complete perspective of how everything comes together end to end. Now we have to give. This is our taxable income, which is our revenue minus our fiscal cost. On this, we need to pay tax. Once again, let's build some certain scenarios on tax. Why is that? We live in a democracy. Our government changes. They can do anything anytime. So why should we not build a robust plan? So let's say and if for an industry, they charge very high tax, say like 0.4%, 0.5%, or 50%, 0.6, 0.7, or zero point 0.8 also. They might sometimes take 80% as well. You never know. And let's deal with 50% we are paying. So what shall we do? This is our taxable income. We will multiply this with this one and then fix the cell and pay our taxes. Once you calculate this, then these all things will come together. How will they come together? Let's calculate this. So let's say, what is our cash in? We are not earning from anything apart from selling of oil and gas. So this is exact replica of the revenue. So total cash in, it's a question of cash in minus cash out, is exactly this. What is your, there is another term, technical cost. Technical cost is you don't care about depreciation, everything. You have to make arrangement of that much amount of money available each year. And what is that amount of money you need to make available? Which is this one plus the total of the operating expense. This money needs to be made available in order to build your project. What then is the pre-tax cash, you can say cash flow you are getting? The pre-tax cash flow, can anyone say what is that? Of course, the difference between these two. So your cash in, which is this money, minus cash out, is what is your total cash flow coming to you. And what then is the government take? Of course, the summation of the tax and the royalty. So government will take this plus government will take the royalty, and you add them. What is minus? Which means you are not making money. This is recorded as a deferred tax, which means you will receive this money back before you start paying tax. However, going forward, you can see 744 million you have to pay to the government. But then what is your net cash flow? Can anyone say? Net cash flow is whatever you get from your pre-tax minus whatever government takes from you. The difference between these two is exactly what is your net cash flow. And what is your cumulative cash flow then? It is basically in the first year, this value. In the second year, basically you add this with that and you accumulate them. And you just go on adding them up to here. And that's your, let's see how all these things comes together. These are all dollar million, and let's color them something like this, green. What we see, we make 1,000, we still make 1 billion, which is your total cumulative net money you make from this project. How you know it? So let's plot these two graphs with the number of year, and um, insert. What we'll do is we'll do a bar graph. Let's make some changes. Let's make one of them a line. How do we do that? Probably here. Mm-mm. Okay. So as you can see, our overall business plan is made. How does it look like? We lose money. Of course, we go in. This point, the lowest point is called maximum exposure, which is like 461, because after that you are gaining money. You are actually making money. You are making money from the, if you can see, from the fifth year as this curve moves this way. That you lose money for the first 3 years, start making money, and from fourth year you make more money, and then you go down. Your cumulative cash flow, you become cash flow positive from the fifth year, and the overall money you make is about $1 billion, in spite of paying to the government a significant amount. Now, how will this change? Let's say if we pay 40% royalty, you make $775 million. If you pay a lot of tax, say 70% tax, you make $400 million. And if your oil price increases to say 90, you make north of $1 billion, 1,000 million. So that is how things come together in a business planning of oil industry. Now there are more to it, and I have a presentation I will show you. Now, before I move, I'll pause here. I will show you one more thing for your decision taking. But let me pause for a minute or two and ask you questions. Does it make sense? Are you clear, or any other question you might have? You can unmute yourself and ask me whatever you want to. No question from anyone?
Sir, how do you calculate that take cost and net CF?
Take cost means, can come again, please?
Sir, that one below, with, sir, the below of cash in, like take cost?
The government take?
No, no, sir, upper.
Technical cost. So
Yes,
technical cost, you see, we do depreciation and royalty, etc. However, if you say that, what's your name?
So Devesh Kumar Singh.
Devesh. So Devesh, let's say we are doing this project. How much money you need to make arrangement? So on year one, you need this $200 million for all your capex expense, plus your opex expense, which is $3 million. So this is an addition of the OPEX and the CAPEX. While we do the depreciation to calculate how much tax we need to pay, but in the end, you need to have $203 million in your bank to start this project. So it is an addition of the OPEX and the
And
CAPEX, is
capex.
a
Okay,
technical cost.
okay.
Why we do it? Because this gives one parameter for us to understand that we need to make arrangement for this much amount of money in order to start this project. Why we want to do pre-tax cash flow? Of course we need, because in pre-tax cash flow we are not need to understand that before tax how much money sink is happening, which is exactly this, that it is sinking 203 million in the first year minus 287 going forward. We are making money, and this is how it is. What is government take? You know, the royalty plus the tax, and the net is pre-tax minus government take is this, and this is the net cash flow. And you need to understand that, okay, first 3 years I need to make arrangement, and then my project will becoming profitable and it will fund itself. There is one more thing to it. Let's say this is a year. So what we will do here is as follows. Let's say -1. You know compound interest, right? And you know the time value of money. What is time value of money? Money today is worth more than money tomorrow. So if you have $100 today, is much more worth than you're getting $100 tomorrow, because you can invest that $100 to get more money as a result. And how much more you can take is depending on how much of skill you have to grow your money. So if you can start creating certain scenarios that if this money is needed, how much money I need, cancel, how much money I need today to fund this project, or if I have an alternative way to make this much money, how much exactly the rate of return I need. How we do it? This is called discounting. Let's say we are extremely savvy investors and we can make 10% money, 10% return on our money. How we then do it? We take this net cash flow, multiply this with one. I'm just using a compound interest formula here, and raise it to the power of -1. Where is the rest? Yes, to see how much it is. So what this means is, if you have to spend $186 million next year, you have to have $169.9 million this year, assuming you can make 10% on your return. And if I pull this, and if I pull this, what this means is, you make $1 billion in the end of at the end of the 10th year. If you actually want to make that $1 billion, you should be having, your money's worth is actually $450 million today. Why this is important? This is a simple way in Excel to calculate. It's called NPV formula. You can actually give a rate. For example, let's see, in 15. At 15%, I just show you how the formula works, and then I will show you with the so if you can make at 15%, oh sorry, I need to go and change the rupees unit. But if you have to make at 15%, the value of your money that you make at 10 years, you need to have 279. So at what percentage of return you think your net present value is zero? That is called IRR. What is IRR? It's called internal rate of net return. And then I will move to the presentation. And once I present, it will all make a lot of sense to you. So if I am making a cash flow like this, I am making return at the rate of 31%. So if you make 31% return in any other investment today, then this investment and that investment have equal value. So if you have a means to make more than 31% investment, you probably will better off doing that investment than investing in this oil project. And you can do these scenarios. If you pay 80% tax, then you are making 22% return. If you pay, say, 25% royalty, you are making 18% return. Of course, the oil price we have assumed is very high. If you make 50%, $50 oil price, you can see you're making 14% return on your investment, while ignore the rupee, while at 15% you are losing $20 million. So these are certain checks we can do. So this is how all the things come together to say that what is my uncertainty range, what is my buffer, do I have other alternative options to invest the money in a better cause, and if not, we do this project. That's how a overall business plan is done. I need to make sure that few other nuances come together so you can make the end-to-end picture in your mind. But before that, does it make sense? Do you think that now we can go to the investor and make a very informed discussion with the investor, like this is how I am going to give you return and this is how the overall 10 years plan look like?
Yes, sir. So I have a question. Can the companies not manipulate the fiscal cost uh,
Mhm.
to like reduce the tax to be paid? Like they can manipulate by showing different OPEX spendings.
See, there are many things you can do. I probably won't use the term manipulate. Can you? Not, no, because as large companies, you need to have many layers of auditing, and if you are caught, you need to. This is a financial fraud. However, what you can do is, what I have shown you is a very simple way of doing it. You can say that, okay, I will pay less tax. As a result, I will consider high depreciation, which is called many type of depreciation equations, exponentials and stuffs like that, double depreciation. So you can say, okay, I will not expense my depreciation uniformly all over. I will say 100 out of 200 million, 100 million is expensed in the first year. As a result, your taxable income goes down, so you pay much lower tax. Similarly, in OPEX and other areas, the only lever you have is to negotiate with your vendors that how low you can do. Typically, you can play with the depreciation most likely, because capex, you are using your vendors to build the platform. It is what it is. OPEX, yes, you can give low salary, you can hire low cost buildings. Of course, you can do it, but typically the main levers are oil price. As you can imagine, higher oil price means very high profit. Royalty and tax, of course, you go, means the CEO and other, what do you think they do? They go and negotiate with the government that can the royalty, we're not making money, can the royalty be lower? Those kind of discussions do happen.
All
Any
right.
other question?
So can you please repeat cumulative cash flow?
Cumulative cash flow is you just adding the previous year's cash flow. So this is every year, this is your, so for year one, in overall, you are sinking $184 million. Year two, you are sinking $243 million. Year nine, you spend some, you earn some because your well have started producing. So you overall, you sink my $19 million. And from year four onwards, you're making money. As you can see in this cash flow, that from year four, it has changed direction to the positive. However, you need to know what is my cumulative sink, because what is this one, which is 400. So I add the first year with the second year cash flow, and then I get this one. Then again, I add this one to get this one. Again, I add this one to get this one. So we add the previous, go on adding the previous year.
Yes, sir, got it.
Now, you might ask why we do it. Because we need to know our maximum exposure. What is our maximum exposure? Minus 446 million. Because we better need to make arrangement of this much amount of money before we venture to start this project at all. Because beyond this, our exposure reduces because the project starts funding itself. So the cumulative curve, if you see this gray curve here, this is the maximum exposure when you need it in the third year. So you need to understand that how do I make arrangement for this money, how should I fund it. So that's why how cumulative is important. Net is every year how much money you are sinking or earning. Make sense? It's simple common sense.
Yes, sir, got it.
Any other questions? Do you see reason in creating it
Sir,
together? Go ahead, Nitish.
sir, what is the difference between depreciation and discount?
Discount is, say you are investing your money at fixed deposit rate of 7%. So that is your discount rate. So if you have, for example, 100 rupees, if you have to spend 200 rupees in year 3, you probably need to invest 100 rupees at around 22% or something like that today to get 100. So your 22% is your discount rate, because money today is worth more than money tomorrow. So whatever tomorrow's money is needed, which is in our project, can be discounted as per the interest you can earn from the market.
Okay, sir.
So if you need this money tomorrow next year, which is $184.6 million, if you can invest your money at 10%, then you need $167 million today to fund $184 million tomorrow, provided you have a means to get 10% return on your investment. Of course, 10% is very high. You can always try with, let's if we make it say typical fixed deposit of say 0.7%. So if you put it in fixed deposit, you need to put $172 million today to fund $184 million tomorrow. So that is called discounting. What is depreciation? You know what it is. So depreciation is you create an asset today, the economic benefit of that asset will be realized in the next 10 years. As a result, even if you spend 100 rupees to create that asset, you are going to expense the spend from your taxable calculation for the next 10 years. How you do it? There are many ways to do it, but what we have assumed here is a very simple straight line method, which is 10% every year. Making sense?
Okay, sir. Yes, understood.
Is it clear or is it still?
Sir,
No, it's
clear.
very good question, and it is completely normal to have confusion. But once you see this picture, then you will. It's not only for oil industry. Some of you will do startups. Some of you will become. As you grow in an organization, if you make sense, it all comes down to money. You will have a lot. You can join a lot of dots, which seems hazy in the beginning. Any other question? Any question from anyone else?
I suppose there are no questions, sir.
Okay, so what we will do is we will now go to a presentation. I think, shall I? Why is not? Just give me a second. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, sir. So we
Okay,
can see.
great. So what we'll do is, now let's see how all these things comes together. In the business plan, what are the objectives? So the presentation we are doing is business planning in oil industry. So it's not only the financial part of it, which we have seen. We want to translate strategy into action, to identify how we allocate resources, how we, over the next years, for example, with respect to people, capital, operating, feasibility, expenses, etc. We want to provide effective financial planning. We just did that. Provide the insight to set performance target. We just did that. We have our targets, like how much oil or gas we need to be producing to meet our objective. Transparency on drivers of value and risk, and identify key decisions. There are transparency, so we have created scenarios on our oil price, taxes, royalties. We can create scenarios on your OPEX, CAPEX expenses, as well as your hydrocarbon forecast also, but for the sake of time, we've just created so we can do that. It gives you, helps you in other important business processes. For example, you might need to fund other projects from the money you earn from here. You might need to uh, take care of environmental sustainability and so many other things. You can only do if you have a clarity of how much money you will be making, and of course understand and mitigate risks. Now please pay attention here. I think we're doing excellent. We might overrun by 15 minutes, and I would appreciate a lot of questions from you. What we have, remember, we only assumed we have a discovered oil field when we did our cash flow analysis, and we just developed it and operated it and created a cash flow. Correct? Now, but there are things to be done to discover it. So that we just were handed a discovered oil field. We put platform there, we drilled wells there, and we operated it. So what needs to be done before that? And also, once we once we finish our operation, there are things to be done. What are those things? We need to abandon it. We cannot be irresponsible and leave it like that. So let's understand what are those various phases. First is exploration. Why you want to do, you might ask, exploration? Because it's a non-renewable resource. If we are depleting your resource, you will run out of business. So you need to replace your reserves, which is called RRR, reserves replacement ratio. What are the other reason? It might be a strategic fit. You might have in some areas technological superiority. You might have organizational fit. If you get a block just beside the block you're operating in the same country, it might be a commercial feasibility. So every company has their strategy based on their strategic fit, or it might be sometimes just political reason that you need to do exploration too. So once you do exploration, what you do, you need to find the next big oil field or gas field. Once you have found it, you don't prove the commerciality, you just prove that there is accumulation of hydrocarbon. Then there is a decision gate. The dotted line is the decision gate. You hand it over to the next phase, which is called field development planning. A lot of you will be joining oil industry to do work on this phase only, which is you take your blocks from discovered exploration blocks and take it to the next phase, which is where we started our journey in our spreadsheet calculation, which is taking the final investment decision. What are the value drivers, levers, and focus criteria? During field development planning, we check our technical doability. Can we do it technically? Is it commercial? Which is the next net present value at an internal rate of returns. We are not, even if it is doable, we are just not going to do it because if it is not commercial or adds value. What are the risks? Can we manage the project risks? And whether it fits to our company strategically or not. Once we have done all this work, we come to the next gate. What is the next gate? Firm investment commitment. So these are the commitment. You remember we are thinking about $500 million. That $500 million is called the final investment decision. The top management will get involved, and as workers, you all need to present and convince people. Yes, we feel confident that we can make this much money if we take the investment decision. Once this investment decision is taken, we go into execution. What is execution then? You remember the first 2 years we are not making any money. We are just putting our platforms and facilities and drilling our wells. That's the execution bit. What shall we focus during execution? Whether there is schedule impact on value because we have taken the investment decision, assuming certain value will be generated. Are we maintaining the value? Are we spending more? Are we getting exactly what we thought we will be getting? Those kind of things. The next one is, of course, the operate phase. So once we have the execution done, we will operate it. What are the focus? What do we focus during operation? Whether we are available because things will go wrong. So your platforms, your wells, your facilities are not going to work 24/7. You need to do maintenance on them. You need to, things will go wrong. Now, how do we optimize it? How do we make sure it is managed? How do we make sure that our reservoirs are optimized? Your pressure will drop. So many things will happen.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes,
Are you changing your slides?
I am. You're not seeing it?
No, sir, you are on the first slide.
I'm so you should have told me.
Sorry, sir.
This is let me come out. So there's some animation. So let me come out of this. Let me present without in presentation mode. Can you see this slide?
Yes, sir, various phases.
Yes, should have told me. Anyway, so these are all in an animation. So the animation probably won't work. So bear with me. So what I'm telling is this is the exploration phase. This is, you do the resource base, and these are your focus areas. I have already explained. There is a dotted line decision gate. This moves to the FTP, your focus area, whether I can do it technically, whether the net present value and IRR makes sense, project risk, strategic fit. You take your investment decision, you go to execution. Execution, you check your schedule impact on value, capex impact on value. So you check your, basically your time and how much money you are spending. Yeah, you take more time, you're losing value. Once it is done, you check your operation readiness. This is another gate. You then start producing. When you produce day in, day out, which is wells, reservoirs, facilities management, reducing cost and increasing cash flow from operation. After you're done, you abandon it. Why, you might ask? Because of course you care for environment, you care for your sustainability of your company, and you care for your reputation. So each phase has focus areas. Each phase has certain decisions to be taken, and each of these phases had certain business plans to be made. All these things combined together is the company level business plan. What we have just created from the blank spreadsheet is these two phases, because we have been handed over a discovered oil field which we knew are commercial we inherited at this phase. You remember, we spent the first 2 years drilling and putting platforms, etc., and then we operated it. So we have created a plan for this phase, but these phases are important as well. Once we do it, these two circles means things will hardly ever go as per plan. So what we need to do, we need to always monitor and audit the actual versus plan. This is why, and these things that are we delivering what we planned? Are we getting what we thought? So on and so forth. This is a simple slide, but I couldn't emphasize the importance of this more. Why? See, planning gives us to focus on specific steps to make the business success and achieve its objective. If the vertical axis is the increase in business value, and if the horizontal axis is increasing maturity of the development, which is from exploration all the way to operating, then an early stage of good planning, let's assume you do a good planning and you execute excellent, you maximize your value. Even if you do a good planning but you fail to execute it properly, you kind of create a decent value. If you do a poor planning and do a good execution, you drain your value of your business significantly. And you can imagine if you do a poor planning and a poor execution. So I don't need to talk about it. So the point I'm trying to say here is the importance of good planning is paramount to understand that for future value of your business. Now, of course, we need to, some of you might have seen it, some of you might not have seen it. This is from the SPE website. You can go and check in SPE website. We need to classify our resources based on certain criterias, right? Now, let me give you a little bit of a background and perspective. Let's say you are a business of making cars. You know how many cars you are making, you know how many cars you are selling, and you have firm control on the numbers. But if you are in the business of producing oil, everything is below the ground. So no matter how much technology you use, you will never be able to accurately say how much of oil and gas producible you have. As a result, we create a range. So the horizontal axis is the range of uncertainty. Your high probability is low case. If you are very confident to produce 100, then your your high case is, say, if your base case is 100, then your high probability case is 80, which means it's a low volume case. As you go up the axis, your technical and commercial maturity increases. In this slide, as you can correlate from this slide, the exploration prospects, as they increase in maturity, they go from play, lead to prospect. I'm sure you understand that by now, those who have done year 3 or year 4 pre-final years. And you will have some unrecoverable, something which is just not you are interested in. Then you move over to the next decision gate, which is called contingent resource. So first is prospective resource. You have then contingent resource. In that contingent resource, you will be working on some, which is the field development planning. And of course, you will probably hold on some because you just think that you don't have the resource, or they're not yet commercial, or you wait for oil price to increase. So there will be these two gradations of light and dark grays, a bunch of resource which you probably not work, and a bunch of resource which will mature till field development planning. Once you take a final FID, this is your reserves. And the reserves can be developed or can be undeveloped. Why is that? You remember the first 2 years, although we have taken the investment decision, but it is still you cannot produce. The first 2 years is undeveloped resource. Once you are producing them, this is developed, which means you have sunk the money and it is producing. Undeveloped means you have promised the money, you have not yet developed it. The green part is your reserves, the gray part is your contingent resource, and the blue part is your prospective resource, which is in the exploration phase. Now, if you say you are running an oil company, you're selling the oil to somebody who is also running $1 billion business, maybe to a refinery, maybe to a tanker, doesn't matter. So what should you do to run your business? You probably, the common sense approach is, you will have a probability of low base high case, but you will probably run your business most based on your mid case, which is your base case, which is why I have, this is called 2P, 2C, and 2U. If you have to commit someone that how much of oil and gas you are going to produce in future in your business plan, a typical common sense is that I'm going to provide the base case. However, in certain situation, if you are a listed company and if you trade in a stock market, they don't care we make money or not. They care that whether investors' interests are protected or not. So in those kind of situation, for that we call external reporting, we have to provide the high probability but low case. So you might have 90% probability of success in the low case. So as a result, you need to, and the high 3P case, or the low probability high volume case, is sometimes you want to do to see the overall range of uncertainty that you have. So that's how we classify our petroleum resources. This is a very important slide. Those who will be working in the oil industry is going to deal with this a lot of time. Is it making sense? Any question on this slide? Okay, I think we're doing excellent. Let's move on. So what are the major principles? The system is project based, so you have to really have a project to exploit them. Classification is based on chance of commerciality. As you have seen, as you move higher up in the axis, your commerciality, chance of commerciality increases. Categorization is based on recoverable uncertainty. Base case uses evaluators few forecast of future conditions, so you need to understand how the future condition changes to really make your predictions. We use deterministic and probabilistic methods. This kind of classification applies both for conventional and unconventional oils. And the resource that we actually say is our sell to make money is the one that is available for sale. And I'll come to it in the next slide. I have two more slides to cover. And the net resource is allocated based on contractual entitlement. Say if you are contractually obliged to only take 50% of what you produce because you have other partners, then as your company, you can only you have to add that 50% to the overall quantity to come to your company's business plan. Let's move to the second last slide, and this is which probably will be the bread and butter. Remember, we started with the product and we started with the forecast that how much it is going to produce. That's exactly what you guys will be producing. There are a number of tools in the market: Petrel, Eclipse, even Excel, Dynamo, AFM, SRMS. You will get to know, or probably you know them already. You create certain forecasts. The forecasts are actually cut off at certain point. You might have a license cut off because you don't have license to operate beyond a certain time. You might have a technical cut off, which is your oil is or gas is not recoverable beyond that. Or you might have a economic cut off, which is even if you recover, even if you have license, but you will not make money because it is so low, then you put the lowest of all these three cutoffs to create your plan. And yeah, we make use of a lot of tools. This slide is best presented with the animation that is already there. Unfortunately, it's not working. Let me tell you, let's now pull all the thing together, whatever we have learned. You start here. So let's just focus on this bit. You start with your data. You have rock volume data, seismic data, property evaluation, your exploration, field limit, contracts, etc., etc. That's how you start with. Then you have your geologist and geophysicist that creates the 100% petroleum volume in place. Then what is the science that you are learning in these 4 years? It's nothing. It's multi-phase fluid flow through a porous medium with changing pressure and temperature, nothing else. So you apply the science of multi-phase fluid flow through porous medium to calculate your recoverable volumes from the 100% volume that your geologist give you. On that volume, you recover, but you just can't sell everything. Why? Because you have to, it's a lot of those volumes, oil or gas is consumed in operation. You have to, because of facility constraints and whatever reasons, you have to flare, and there are a lot of losses in the system. And then there will be deferments. Your facilities will not work 100% of the time. You take those things out, then you come to your 100% production forecast. Once a production forecast is there, then you apply your entitlement. You are not entitled to everything because hardly ever we operate as one company. At least the government might be there as your partner. You add your license and contracts, and you remember we created our cost assumptions and price assumptions. You apply all of them to create your final plan. What are the final product? You have your proved reserves. If you have to do external reporting, remember we spoke about reporting to the stock market if you are a listed company. Also, you check robustness of your plan. Internal reserves, which is the base case, oftentimes we use for business planning. Contingent and prospective resources. These are the FDP funnel, which is the field development plan, continuously to replenish your reserves and the prospective results, which is your exploration volumes. And I hope with all this, you can see how everything comes together with the economics to make a plan for the company and where you all play a role. I would appreciate a lot of questions. I think it makes sense and you can see the end-to-end picture by now. Over to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for this brilliant webinar, sir. I believe that a business plan for the petroleum industry is a blueprint for the business, and we have attended many webinars regarding our department, but this is the first time where I have learned about assuming oil prices, calculating revenue, capital, and the operational expenditure, royalty, and the fiscal cost. It was interesting to know, sir, how a company pay tax to the government and how they gain profit, and also overview on petroleum resource management system is something which attracted me throughout the webinar.
Hey, Shiksha, thank you. I would appreciate some questions from all of you because that's how we will learn. I think you can see reason,
Yes,
uh,
sir. Yes, sir.
but
Sir, actually, we have collected some conceptual and theoretical question from our friends.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Um, Sir, so the first question is, what are the biggest challenges one can face at each stage of planning, whether it's from establishing the mission, developing a plan, or making it a living document?
See, the challenges depends on the size of the company, Tarang. So if you're a global company, multinational, for example, the company I was working for, Shell, uh, you have operations in too many countries. You have too many fiscal regime. By fiscal regime, there are too many different types of contract. I told you about one type of contract, but there are many. Production sharing, noble contract, etc. Then there is different ways because there is no one standard way of evaluating your production forecast. You remember your plan heavily depends on these four parameters: your forecast, which is the product you sell, the cost, the price, and the taxing system. The cost and price probably have some standardized global. That too is not the case. Whatever you to put a platform in place in Southeast Asia is completely different than put a platform in place in Gulf of Mexico, for example. So the biggest challenge we face in large companies is the fiscal regime is different. The way you do your production forecast is different because we have not standardized across country companies, and you know how much uncertain these are. The data, the way you use the data is different. So as a company, to come up with a robust, solid plan which is standardized is the biggest challenge. I can imagine that will not be the case for smaller companies because they have less complexity to deal with and they can standardize it. But in the end, the challenge is also goes back to the skill of the reservoir engineer, because the forecast you do has to be have to be robust, and how you do it, how skilled you are, has a lot of bearing to the final business plan. Yeah, in a nutshell, it depends on company to company, but I hope you can see the challenges as I explained.
Yes, sir, I got it.
Thank you, sir. So we have our next question. How
Mhm.
do inflation and deflation affect business planning in the oil industry?
uh, you should know this, whoever has asked this. Inflation is price rise. So if your inflation is high, what happens is your cost of developing a platform or drilling a well, everything will go high. So you will incur more costs, so less profit. Also, in an inflationary environment, what happens is people spend less. Why is that? Because people want to. If your income doesn't increase and if the cost of product increase, people spend less. If people spend less, then people spend less on oil also. If people spend less on oil, the demand of oil goes down, the oil price goes down. So if the oil price goes down and the cost of your platform goes up, you can imagine the business becomes unprofitable. So that's in an inflationary environment. That being said, I'm talking about inflationary environment beyond a certain threshold. A little bit of inflation is always good for the economy because it keeps the economic engine running. If you know that if you buy a house today is going to be cheaper tomorrow, you'll keep the money to yourself and not buy it today. So in a way, little inflation is good. Deflation it's a different ballgame altogether, because if prices are going down, it's very hard to deal with deflation, because in inflation you can know, because you need to understand the reason for the deflation. Is it the overall economy slowing down? Then it's a different game. Is it for political reason, war? Yeah, means prices won't fall assuming there is a deflation. Prices tend to be sticky and remain same, and you need to do a lot more. You need to be a lot more careful to really make plans in a deflationary environment.
Yes, sir. Understood. So we have some question in the chat box itself.
Yes.
One says, "What is the difference between contingent and techno-economic reserve?"
Techno-economic reserves is something. Have I? Can you tell me what do you mean by it? Means just I can explain you the contingent reserves. Techno-economic is a term I don't personally use or haven't. Is that something that you have come across? Whosoever asked the question, I just wanted to know.
Yes, sir, sir. Like actually, sir, we have course in previous semester. So there I have, sir, seen a word techno economics and the contingent, sir. So I don't understand the difference between them. So, sir, I have.
Yeah, Nitish. So let me answer you a little differently, so that you can. Ultimately, my objective is to make sure that you understand the things physically, and that's why I started with a blank page and see how all these things comes together. The oil industry is notorious for jargons. There are millions of jargons, and it is near impossible to remember every jargon and every acronyms out there in the oil industry. However, that being said, if you understand how, I'm sure techno-economic will somewhere fall in this place. That okay, you have exploration. as we as we go up, because you drill one or two wells, you think these are actually sizable volume, you move from play to lead to prospect, and once you think this prospect can be commercial, you take a decision get to move it from exploration to development project. The entire span of development project is called contingent resource. Once you have matured the contingent resource to an extent, you can take a final investment decision. Once that decision is taken, you call it undeveloped. And once you have put the platforms and everything in place to produce it, to get the oil to your tanker, then you call it developed resource. Now, why I showed this? Because this is as per SPE PRMS, which is Petroleum Resource Management System. This is a global standard. Every company does a little bit of tweaking to it. Depends on whatever company you work, you will probably call them by different names here and there. 1C, 1, 2, 3C, 2C, and all these kinds of name might be tweaked, but the overall concept remains the same. So if understand physically, it's simple common sense how it is done. Techno commercial and whatever terms is there in other industry, you probably will be able to fit it in this scheme of things.
Okay, sir.
Hello.
Mhm.
Uh, Devjit, I am Arun Sahu from Chennai here for the information of the house. I am
Hey,
a
hey.
batchmate of Devjit. We are there in ISM together, and we'll talk those things later. My question was that do we plan to depreciate our capital investment during the project life period, or we keep it some value, the dead value for those assets?
Yeah, good, very good question, Arun. And Arun, thanks for joining. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, yeah,
It's been a while. I think I haven't met you after we left college.
yes.
Yeah, so let me go to the spreadsheet where I was explaining the. So what happens is, just give me. mm, Anyway, it will take probably a lot of time to. So what happens is, yes, you are right. Sometimes, let's say, let me give you an example of, say, you buy a laptop, which is a capital expenditure for the company. A laptop costs 1 lakh rupees today, and you want to depreciate it, and you know the laptops are and needs to be phased out after 5 years. So you make a assumption that it's called another term which I want to introduce it called salvage value. So the laptop can be sold at, say, 20,000 rupees after 5 years. So you take the salvage value out in the second hand market to some people who will be needing it. And then the remaining 1 lakh minus 20,000, which is 80,000, you want to depreciate across the life of that field. Similar goes for platform. If we spend $100 million for installing a platform, there is hard metals out there, steels, irons, and whatnot, and whatever. Those are not going to be junked into the sea. We will definitely recover them and sell them in the second-hand market. So we probably can recover $20 million from it. That is the salvage value. We take it out and then we depreciate it. There are double declining methods, straight lining declining, exponential decline, many methods. But in the interest of time and the audience, we are they are the students. I just explained a simple method, which is straight line, and you don't have any salvage value. It is zero salvage value in the end. Hope
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. I got clarified. Actually, in case of platform itself, maybe you may be requiring more money for your abandonment cost than your salvage value. I think. Is it?
Sometimes, yes, you're right. Because of the extreme environmental consciousness, sometimes to just dismantle it, you may sell it for 20 million, but in order to bring it from the sea to the coast to in a sellable condition, you might end up spending 40 million.
Yeah.
Then you negotiate with the government, but probably you have to still do it because of environmental awareness and reputation of your company, etc. So it's
Uh,
far, as you can imagine, guys, it is far more complex than what I have explained. But my objective was to, in a span of an hour,
Here I will
give an
mention one thing, Devjit. I don't know, it is very informative for the students, but as a reserve engineer, I'm working in ONGC since last 20 years, 16, 17 years after leaving ISM. And it is very useful to me. And many of the things we do in reality, actually, for the students, it is really very helpful. And I'm very happy that my friend Devjit has professed this topic so nice, and it's really very informative. Please take the use of it, and it's very good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, Arun. Thanks. Hey, guys, any other question?
Yes, sir. Sir, there's one question from one of my seniors. He has asked, since oil prices are volatile, how do companies predict them?
Extremely good question. So let me answer it this way. We don't have any means to predict them. That is why you have seen that I've created a listing 30, 40, 50. You remember that? So we can only create scenarios that up to what oil price it is robust. That from $30 to $90, is it robust? Then you probably can guess, okay, whatever the oil price, this project will be profitable. It can be profitable. IRR I calculated in the end, which is the internal rate of return, can be 10%, or it can be 40%. But at least I have tested various scenarios and I know it is very robust. Now, that being said, are there no mechanism to predict it? That's not correct. Every large companies have their internal strategic team. They take a lot of supply demand scenario. I have to go into, there are oil is a commodity that price is determined by the future price. When we say oil price, we are predicting the future of oil price. So based on these commodities future projections, based on the political and economic condition of the world, there are models and strategic teams in company that predict the base case scenario of the oil price. So what do you think that, say, let's our company says that a base case scenario would be $60. We will still go on making $30 to $90 and see how robust is this IRR. At $90, my IRR, internal rate of return, is 28%. At $30, it is 5%. So I still have a profitable project. Um, yeah, that's about it. There is no other means.
Thank you, sir. These were all the questions we had.
Hey, I think you guys were able to grasp something. I tried to start it from a blank and give you a end-to-end picture of how everything comes together. I would be personally looking forward to meet you. If you are in Bangalore, feel free to ping me via LinkedIn. I think Nitish, you are connected with me, right?
Yes, sir.
Um, Otherwise, I'm more than sure you'll have an absolutely brilliant career going forward. Keep learning, keep developing yourself, and looking forward to see you sometimes. And if you like it, give it a like in LinkedIn, because I'm starting something on my own.